Year after year, more and more people are looking to make the move to Thailand. And one thing that everybody has in common, no matter where you're coming from or what you do for work, is everybody needs a place to live. But when it comes to looking for condos in Thailand, there are quite a few things that may be different than where you're coming from. So make sure you stick it out through today's video so you can be fully informed, and that way you can make the best decision on finding the best place for you. What is up, guys? How's it going? I hope you are all having a wonderful day so far. If you're not, well, sorry, I guess it kind of sucks to suck. But in light of current events going on in my world, if you follow the channel, if you've been here for a while, you will know just in a couple weeks from now, actually, we are getting out of Pattaya. I've been here long enough, I feel like I've gotten the full Pattaya experience. So we are going up to Bangkok, and one thing with that, of course, is I had to find a new condo in Bangkok. And while I was doing so, I was thinking about how I thought about this whole process when I first got to Thailand as opposed to now. And there's quite a few things that are much different. Things that I do differently, different things that I'm looking for, situations I'm avoiding, situations I'm being attracted to. So I wanted to make this video for you so you can learn from all the mistakes that I have made when it comes to looking at condos in Thailand or signing leases or talking to the right people, whether it be owners or agencies, whatever the case may be. That way you can learn from my mistakes. You can save yourself the money that I ended up wasting. I sat down, I wringed my brain out for a little bit. If I had to think of the top pieces of advice I could give you to make sure you are set up properly and you have the best chance of success at finding a place that you really enjoy, I have put those together for you today in this video right now. So let's hop right into it. First things first, where should you look? Obviously, you're gonna need to set appointments. You're gonna have to look at pictures of places, maybe find stuff that you're interested in. That way you can go look at them, make sure it's the right spot for you. Well, there's quite a few ways you can do this. So personally, I tend to lean on Facebook groups. No matter what part of Thailand you are in, there is group after group of people putting up listings for properties that are for sale or for rent. I tend to look through these because I feel like it's usually a good place to get a pretty good deal. And it can also kind of help you with the vetting process when it comes out, down to who you're going to be renting from. But there are quite a few caveats when it comes to that when we're talking renting from a private owner or an agency. Don't worry, we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. But of course, there are other options as well. If for whatever reason you don't want to use Facebook, when it comes to agencies, a lot of agencies have their own websites where there will be a bunch of listings. There's also a few kind of, independent listing sites. So one that I've used quite a bit to kind of get a gauge on, areas or pricing in certain parts of town is Fazwaz. Fazwaz. This is not sponsored by any means. I genuinely use them. The only thing that I've kind of run into with that site that kind of tends to be an issue sometimes is I think people put up listings and then when that place gets rented out, they don't get taken down. So one thing to pay attention to if you are looking on there is how old that listing is. So that is one thing to consider, but it is a great site to kind of just get a gauge. If you want to be in a specific part of town, you can go on there, look at places that might be in your range, and that will give you an idea of kind of what prices you're going to be working with. Now, a very important thing to understand, especially if you want to go the Facebook route, is online. Of course, just like anywhere else, there are scams you have to avoid when it comes to renting places in Thailand. And most of those people are going to be trying to utilize Facebook. So a good rule of thumb is just don't send anybody any money prior to you being able to go look at the condo and ideally sign a lease on the spot. Get IDs, copy of passports, whatever you need to do to make sure all your bases are covered. But we'll dig into that a little bit more on other ways you can avoid possibly getting caught up in that situation as well. It happens all the time. I see it, at least 1 or 2 posts a week of somebody posting, hey, I talked to this agent. I'm coming to Thailand in 2 weeks. I sent them money. A bit later in the video, I'll get into more that if you are planning on coming here, what I would do personally to kind of set myself up for success so I would be able to look at places without the possibility of getting scammed. Now, let's say you do find a listing online, you set up a viewing, you go in, you meet the agent or you meet the owner, whatever. There's a few questions that I think are very important to ask when it comes to Thailand condos. First things first, Wi-Fi. Everybody needs Wi-Fi nowadays. All buildings are gonna have some type of Wi-Fi access, but there's multiple providers in Thailand, and a lot of the time, certain buildings will only be set up for certain providers. A few other things that I like to ask about is one, 7-Eleven, baby. Where's the closest 7-Eleven? Another very important one when it comes to Thailand is washing access. Does the room have a clothes washer, or is there some on site? Are there community ones downstairs? Is there a service across the street? Another one for me personally is water. Now, if you have that 7-Eleven close, that's great, but me, I use filtered water for everything. So having one of those osmosis machines downstairs is super great. It's 1 baht per liter, which is awesome. You can use that for your cooking or whatever. Another thing that I like to look for is when it comes to the bathroom, do they have one of those standalone water heaters that is your specific water heater that just kind of heats as you go? Or is there like a community, a building hot water heater? Obviously, if you're in a big condo, it's a community water heater. You can get stuck taking cold showers sometimes, which, is great when you want to do it, but if you don't have a choice, that's a bit of a bummer. Now, a major difference that I have noticed when it comes to Thailand condos compared to condos back home is the good value ones, the ones that are a little bit less than market price, or they're in a really good location and very fairly priced, they go quick. Now, when I would look back home, I'd go look at a place and be like, yeah, give me a few days to think about it. I'll get back to you in a week or so. And more often than not, you could think about it and you had time. At least with me, I don't know if it's maybe because I'm always looking for a good deal. So I'm finding places that are somewhat discounted. They're in good parts of town and they're quite a bit cheaper than other places in the area. Every time I have looked though, condos go super quick. If you find a place online that you want to check out, it is a good idea to be like, hey, I want to see this today, or I want to see it tomorrow. And you got to kind of pull the trigger quick, especially if you're, looking at a place that is a very good deal. I guess it can kind of help you make a decision as if you go look at a place, it's a really good deal, it's a nice place, it's fairly priced. You're probably going to have to make a decision on it pretty much right then, or you can almost guarantee that it's going to be gone. Now, another very important decision you are going to have to make is when it comes to who you're going to be renting this place from. Pretty much you're going to have two options. You're going to have private owners, people that own their own condos, they're making the listings, you're going to be dealing, everything you do is going to be dealing with them directly, and then you're going to have agents or agencies. Now, there are pros and cons to both, so we'll just start with the private owners. I used to swear by going through private owners until not this condo, but the one I was in before, for a few different reasons. I feel like if it's a private owner, one, you probably have a better chance to kind of negotiate a deal. If you're talking to an agent, they got to go back and forth. You have a direct line of contact. If anything happens in the condo, it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of get things fixed. Now, some of the cons with a private owner, all those pros kind of solely rely on, the owner being cool and being willing to work with you. And of course, there might be situations like mine was, where when I first moved in, the guy was super cool, understanding, was not, up my booty about anything. And then as time went on, things just got progressively worse and worse. When I first moved in, he was cool about, yeah, just move in and get me the rent when you can. And I'm not worried about a deposit or anything like that. And then lo and behold, 6 months later, he's like, okay, well, I need a deposit. Everybody pays a deposit, even though I was like, you told me specifically that you weren't worried about a deposit, which was a reason that I picked this place so quick. I wasn't crazy about the condo at all, but he gave me a good deal. And then towards the end of it, it was things like, oh, well, my mother's coming to town and she usually stays there. I can't find another room, so could you move out for a month? Just a bunch of hoopla. Now, on the opposite side of that, if you go through an agency, the pros and cons, well, a con might be that they might not be able to make as much wiggle room on the rent. Anytime something happens, you're talking to the agent, then they got to go talk to the owner, then they got to get back to you. And you know how it is using a middleman, things can get lost in translation. It can be a bit of a nightmare. You don't have a direct line of contact if something does happen. Another caveat to a private owner, especially if you're renting from a foreigner, you could be in Thailand in the condo, something breaks, meanwhile they're back in Europe. So you got to foot the bill to get it fixed. With an agency, you might not have to deal with that. A lot of the time you can just talk to the agency, they'll get it taken care of, and then they'll go, get reimbursed from the owner themselves. Another thing is when it comes to deposits, private owners in Thailand are notorious for keeping deposits. They come in, they make their own receipts for damages or missing stuff or anything, they add whatever, and then it's just really hard to kind of pursue litigation from that because they're not technically a business, and then they can kind of sneak things in, or, you know, if you didn't sign a proper lease agreement, stuff like that, it just gets a whole lot more complicated. With an agency, you are much more likely to be able to, you know, get settled up if somebody tries to keep way too much of your deposit or keeps all of it. Read the lease agreement. I've seen so many people get burned because they didn't read some weird clause in there, and then they're out, you know, $700 on their deposits. It kind of really just depends. Personally, with me now, I'm much more likely to go through an agency. Also, with an agency, it can make the hunting process much easier because they all have portfolios already. If you just tell them, you know, this is my price range, this is where I want to be, this is what I'm looking for in the building, they could probably give you more than one listing, things that might not be on other websites. You're much more likely to get things taken care of. And personally, I found you're much more likely to get a fair amount of your deposit back at the end of it. Now, when it comes to the scams, just like anywhere else out there, anything that could be considered lucrative, there's people trying to take advantage of it and trick people into giving them money. When it comes to Thailand condos, the biggest one you are going to run into is somebody will have a listing online. You'll reach out to them and you'll try to say, oh, I want to come view it, or I want to move in here, blah, blah, blah. And then usually what they'll say is something along the lines of, oh, well, there's a reservation fee, or they'll ask you for a fee in order to schedule a viewing, which, you know, I feel like it's kind of common sense that that's pretty scammy, but I understand some people that are coming here, they want to have a place set up before they get here. And that's where you kind of get caught. Any legitimate agent or owner, whatever, is not going to charge you to come see the room. When you see the room, if you want to commit to it, you'll probably pay 1 month right there and sign a lease right there. Get all the information, get IDs, copy of the lease, all that stuff before you transfer anybody money. Now, sometimes things can be a little bit weird. Let's go check in with past Tempus so you can hear a little bit about that. All right, boys. Well, it's official at this point. First month paid. Signing the contract a little bit later today. Now, when it comes to renting, I would advise not transferring any money until you can sign a contract, see a contract. This situation, I got the guy's contact info, all that stuff. He works for an agency, so should be fine. I wouldn't, especially if you're gonna rent from like a private owner, I wouldn't recommend sending any money until you can get the keys and everything. But you know, kind of a reality of condo hunting in Thailand is once you do find a place that you like, you got to pull the trigger pretty quick, especially in this area for this price. He had 2 more viewings today. It would have, that room would have not lasted. So when somebody would have rented it today, you know, if you're looking at places that are kind of market value or maybe a little bit above, you can have a little bit more wiggle room, a little more time to think about things. But with me, I'm always looking for a deal. And when you find a good spot at a good price, if you're into it, you got to kind of get it done right then. But should be all good. Said he's going to send the contract over today. I got all his contact info, all his bank details. I got a business card from him. I got his phone number, all that stuff. So God forbid something did go south, there's ways to figure out where he is and get my money back. So that's all good. But we're official. 2 weeks and counting at this point. We got to head back to Pattaya, start getting our stuff together, start planning for how we're going to get everything up here. But here we are, Bangkok, Tempus TV, baby. So as you can see, sometimes even when you go through an agency, it might feel a little bit iffy. So it's kind of weird. Sometimes, you know, a lot of business things in Thailand are kind of built on trust. So I can understand why some people kind of get caught up and send people money and don't get what they wanted in return. The only reason that I decided to commit to this place initially is because it was a very good deal. I have the information on the agent and the company and everything, and they actually sent me a copy of the lease today. So that is all good. But if you are coming to Thailand and you are worried about having a place set up when you get here, the way that I would do it and the way that I recommend you do it as well, as opposed to being online and trying to send people money and, you know, try to reserve something before you get here, don't do that. Come stay wherever you want to stay. If you want to live in Bangkok, book a hotel for a week or two in Bangkok. Just stay at the hotel, schedule viewings, go look at places, and then, make a decision from there. Not only is this going to make sure that you get eyes on and see what the room and the building is actually like, it's also going to limit your chances on getting scammed. I think that's 100% worth it to pay that little bit extra, pay for the hotel, because, if you want to talk about a waste of money as opposed to paying for that hotel, and then you send somebody a deposit without ever seeing anything, and then you're burnt. And when it comes to the online stuff, good luck trying to, file a police report or anything to get that back. At no fault to the police, but obviously these people are just making fake profiles. They're sending fake IDs, so you're never gonna get that money back. Now, especially if you're going to a place like Bangkok, even Phuket, Pattaya, there are so many condo buildings. So do not worry that, I'm not going to be able to find a room. Nowhere's going to have any availability. There are so many buildings that are half, 3/4 empty. You will 100% be able to find a place that you're cool with in your budget, but it might take a little bit of time to dig for it. Things are getting a bit more expensive, but you can still find amazing deals on condos here, especially compared to back home. So as long as you keep these things in mind, don't forget to ask the proper questions. Don't send anybody money without seeing a room or signing a lease. I personally recommend going through an agency or an agent. I feel like there's just a lot more security going that route. And the thing about it too, the vast majority of the time, the owner who is using that agent, they are paying the agent fee. Every once in a while, I've ran into like a few agencies where they're like, yeah, our fee is 3,000 baht for us to find a room for you. I wouldn't go that route. There's plenty of agents out there who have a portfolio and then the owner is paying the fee on their end. So essentially you don't have to pay anything extra for these rooms. So as long as you do those things, be patient. Don't freak out, play a little bit of defense. If something feels weird, just move on to the next one. You will absolutely be fine, and I'm wholly confident you will be able to find the right place. If you have spent some time in Thailand yourself, you've rented condos, and there's some hard lessons you had to learn, please feel free to drop them down in the comments below. That way, anybody watching who's curious will get the full sphere of information so they don't end up getting burned like I have a few times. Hopefully we've eased your condo anxiety a little bit. I really appreciate you guys being here. These next 2 weeks are going to be a little bit wild for me, so if my schedule gets a little funky, I do apologize for that. I will be doing my best to keep up with everything on here, but especially once we are set up in Bangkok, New Year's Day, we will be fully Bangkok based, I guess. Always based, you know me. We've got tons of new cool videos on the docket, new places to explore, new things to do, and of course you guys are coming with me. So if you want to be notified when those videos do go live, you know what to do. All those cool buttons are down there. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you later.